Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lucore Automotive. Today you are joining me on my pre-purchase, post-purchase inspection of this 1979 AMC AMX. It's going to be an interesting moment because I bought this car for $1,700 for the 2500 road trip we have coming up in July. It is currently mid-June. This car does not run. Does not have a complete engine in it, but I do have an extra engine there. I also have an extra transmission in the back of the car. So, the 2500 road trip, $2,500, 2,500 miles. So I have to get this thing running for $800. Interested? Follow along. Here we go. So a quick short story on this car. Tim of Tim's Enthusiast Garage, he and I were on lunch a couple of days ago, and we were discussing things we want to do, and for his channel and for our channel, YouTube-wise, one of the things we did that we really enjoyed was the 2500 road trip. We did this last year in the August time period in 2019, and it was after I had just bought my Volvo wagon. If you've seen it on the channel, it's a 1994 940 turbo Volvo wagon. I bought it for $2,500, and it was a great car. I love it. I bought it as a daily driver, something that I wouldn't modify, that I could use just kind of as a normal daily driver and shop car, because it's a wagon, so it can haul a lot of stuff, which has turned out to be a great purchase. Now, I have since spent a little bit of money on maintaining it for the last 20,000 miles I put on it since I bought it last year, but we thought, hey, that was a great trip out to Devil's Tower, Wyoming and back. Well, maybe not a great trip, but it was a memorable trip and a lot of fun. Let's do it again. So since we already had done the western trip from Ohio out west, we decided this time we needed to go either north, east, or south. So we put up a couple of ideas on a previous video as far as where we may go, what we might do. And it turns out that the original plan we had, which was going all the way down to the Florida Keys and back, by way of the Blood Mountain Road and the Tail of the Dragon, makes the most sense. It's going to be probably the most fun. With that said, we are fully aware of the fact that we're going to be driving in some very used cars, all the way down to basically the hottest part of the eastern seaboard we can get to. And pushing them a little bit and then coming back. So that's going to be a bit sketchy. Now, to my car, 1979 AMC Spirit AMX. Pretty unique car. This is a 304 V8 4-speed car, so it's even more unique. These are not cars you really ever see anywhere, and I'll be very honest with you, I had not planned on buying one. I was looking for a Mustang convertible, because, you know, going to the beach, going to the islands, that sounds like a good idea. Work my tan while I'm driving down there. So I was looking on Craigslist for Mustang convertibles, see something if I could find something that was broken or a mechanic special or whatever. And couldn't really find anything on the first page or two. So I deleted convertible and just looked for Mustang. I used to own a New Edge Mustang, and it was one of my favorite cars I've ever owned. And figured maybe I should find one of those things. So I was scrolling back through, and I found a Mustang 2, a 1978 Mustang 2 that was baby blue with baby blue interior and baby blue carpeting. Pretty cool car. It's a V6, not so cool, but it is a stick shift, more cool. It was $3,000, and that was a contender. But literally like 2 spots later on Craigslist was this thing. And I didn't know what it was when I first saw it. It looked cool and intimidating. It's got a bulldog stance to it. So I started doing some homework, and fortunately, Rich Lucore is quite the AMC guy. He's had Jeeps of all sorts. He's done a lot of Jeeping and inline 6 stuff. He's done a few cars that have the 304, the 360, the 390, or the 401. So he knew a bit about them, and I just loved the way the car looked. It was in my price range, and I reached out to the guy. So the last video, or I guess the first video in the series, is me going down to inspect this car in this gentleman's property and purchasing it, bringing it back here. That's basically all I've done. The car does not run, obviously. I do have a spare motor for it. I do have a T5 Mustang transmission that came with it as well. That is a 5-speed that is in the back of this thing. So there's a good chance we pull out the 4-speed that's in this. There's a good chance we pull out the 304 that's in this and put this 304 in this. And then we cross our fingers and hope it works. So I have $1,700 in it as it sits right now. I have up to $2,500 I can spend to get it running and driving, turning and stopping. That does not include tires. I can spend extra money on tires and safety stuff so I don't die on this trip. So yeah, I've got $800 to make it run, which is possible. As long as everything doesn't go completely sideways on me, it's possible. But let's take a quick little tour of this thing, give it an inspection, see what we got going on, see how much of a nightmare I just found myself. So on initial inspection, 304 is pretty dirty. Now supposedly this came out of a running, driving, turning and stopping Jeep-ish vehicle from the early 80s, about a month or two ago, which could be possible. It is a 2-barrel, because all of these things in 1979 were 2 barrels, which is interesting. This is probably an upgrade that will happen in the not so distant future, is switching out a 2-barrel setup for a 4-barrel setup. They do exist. She's a little scuzzy. She definitely needs some cleaning and some attention. But essentially, she's all there. We've got our coil, distributor. We don't have any power steering, no air conditioning, no alternator, no none of that. So accessories is going to be a little bit of a challenge. We'll see how we're going to figure that one out. But otherwise, this is supposed to be a running, driving, turning, and stopping 304. So we'll figure out whether or not that is. It doesn't look like it's maybe ever been separated off the block, so whether or not that's a good thing or bad thing, we'll find that out later. Now, before we go anywhere else in this video, I want to talk about this hood. This is awesome. A gigantic flaming AMX. I am a Pontiac guy. Hopefully everybody who sees this channel knows that. I am a Pontiac guy. I have a couple of them. I have a Pontiac problem, as I often say. The Firebird, you know, with the screaming chicken, the fire chicken, whatever you want to call it, on the hood of the Firebird, awesome. Totally late 70s, early 80s, absolutely. This might be even more unique. The sticker package on this car is hilarious. This is from the factory. A gigantic flaming AMX. Absolutely love it. Why this didn't catch on, I don't know. So let's pop the hood. All right, so we're under hood. Clearly we're missing a wee bit of the engine here. The ports to the heads are open to the elements, which is not a good thing. That typically means you're going to end up with water, moisture, all that fun stuff that's gotten down in there, as well as whatever else crawled through here. You never like to see that, so that's not a good thing. But we do have all of our bracketry and our accessories here. So we have our power steering setup. We have our alternator down there. We have all of the bracketry for it. And we have another ignition system. Whether or not we use this ignition system or we swap out to something more updated, we'll see. It is a non-air conditioned car. I don't believe any of these actually were air conditioned cars. Radiator seems to be in pretty reasonably decent shape. I'm going to get that pulled out here not too long from now, and we're going to start cleaning that guy up. But otherwise, under hood wise, we have pretty much everything we need. Nothing I'm real concerned about. Heater core, who knows what the state of that is. You know, I'm not really planning on driving this car in the cold, so I don't really care about a heater core. 9 times out of 10 cars that are out of this era, as soon as you put coolant through them, they start pouring on the floor anyway. So, not something I'm really going to worry about. It's got the battery tray sitting down here, so That's a good thing. Fans are here. The hoses are actually reasonably current. They're all Gates stuff, which is nice. They're just a little dusty and disgusting. We'll see whether or not the power steering setup hemorrhages fluid, or what's going on with that. Once we get there, we'll see. But otherwise, all of the stuff is essentially there. It is missing the AMC grill. There's an AMX grill that looks pretty cool that sits there. That's gone. I'll have to source myself something like that, maybe later on down the road. Priorities right now are get this thing running and driving, turning and stopping, make it pretty later, if we ever make it pretty. The history of this car is actually pretty cool. I've learned a whole lot about these things since I first started looking into them. I really honestly didn't know a lot of the background with these cars. For you who are interested, definitely look into it. It's a pretty neat little piece of automotive history. First American car to go to the Nürburgring and win. How weird is that? Of everything we always built, a car from 1979 from AMC was the first thing to go to the Nürburgring and win 24-hour Nürburgring in their class. Pretty cool. Yeah, so body-wise, it's not perfect. We got some holes. We got some mismatched panels. We got some rust. The rust on the top is basically all just surfaced. It's all nice and solid. There's nothing I'm really worried about there. There are a couple of holes in the door skin on the outside on this side that I'm a little bit concerned about, but not overly concerned about. Again, this is not a beauty contest. Get it running first. We'll figure out everything else later. It does have the plastic fender shrouds on it on the rear. The front ones are gone, and they're essentially unobtainium. So I'm probably not going to do anything with these. If I do anything with them, I may remove the rear ones because these are metal flares underneath this with a plastic flare that goes over top of it. I may remove those and then just run metal flare in the front, metal flare in the rear. As you can see up there, it's got the metal flares there. So you can also get this sticker package, this entire sticker package, which I think is something like 27 stickers. 27 stickers is available online, and I can re-sticker the whole car. You can see more of it here as it goes back on this little cool spoiler that's in the hatch. Hatch mechanism does have a little bit of work that needs done. That's really heavy. Yeah, that's not gonna work. Okay, so yeah, hatch is heavy, but the latch for the hatch needs to be hooked up. There is my T5 transmission sitting in the back there. The floors in the back of this thing are actually in pretty excellent shape. There's nothing I need to worry about with the trunk floor. Hatch I'm actually pretty comfortable with. It's got some patina for sure. It is a fiberglass wing, so it's not anything that's you know, super crazy. It's a neat little kind of duckbill spoiler to it. I really like the styling for it. It's got that cool AMX badge in there. Some of the plastic that goes between the 5-mile-an-hour crash bumper and the body is gone. But back in these days, this is when we had these crazy bumpers that came way the heck out of the body. So what we're probably going to do at some point in time, again, not necessarily all that important right now, is remove some of these extra braces that are in here and bring this bumper more flush with the back of the car so it doesn't stick out quite that far. But like I said, not all that important yet, and we'll get rid of that when we get there. So on the passenger side, we've got some dings, we've got some dents. Again, I'm not terribly concerned with it. It does also, again, have the plastic rear fender shroud, which is cool. The door on this side needs some loving. Got to put the door lock back in it, and somebody definitely put something against this, or put this against something else, that put a heck of a crease down this side. Goes all the way from the front all the way to the back. So I don't know what this hit, what hit this, what the case may be. It's certainly not perfect. This is not structural stuff that really bothers me. It's just stuff that I know I'm going to need to deal with at some point in time in the future. Now there also is a basically fully rotted out rocker panel underneath this guy on the passenger side that will need to be replaced. because that is going to be a problem. If it isn't already a problem, it will be eventually. Now talking about these wheels. These wheels, man, pretty cool. They are 14s. I don't know exactly the size of the wheel yet, but it is running a 265 rated 50/14. 265/50/14. That's huge. Most of the hot rods we build, we put a 275 on the rear of a hot rod with a much bigger motor than a 304 two-barrel. Huge tire. The weird thing is, it has the same size tire in the front. So this thing is a 265 squared. Now, interesting little tidbit, this tire does not exist anymore. I have looked everywhere, and they literally do not exist. I can buy some old ones, if I really, really want to, for about $200 a tire off of eBay, but they are like 10 years old. And I'm not really excited about putting 10-year-old tires on a car I'm going to drive for 2,500 miles. So I do have to figure out a solution for that. Now, obviously I could put a slightly skinnier tire on this car. I don't need to have a ginormous tire on all four corners. It would definitely have a lot of grip with 265 on all four corners, but not necessary. I'll probably end up putting like a 245 on the rear, like a 225 up front. I think we'll be okay with that. I don't think it'll be a problem. And they're available and they don't cost a ton. Now, a question that I would have here for myself. When these cars ran at the Nürburgring, they ran under a BF Goodrich livery. Currently, it is running a BF Goodrich radial TA tire. So, it would make sense for continuity purposes to put a BF Goodrich tire back on this. Good tire, BF Goodrich, radial TAs, they're a great tire. They're a very common tire that a lot of people use for hot rods. Typically speaking, we are kind of a Cooper shop. We run Cooper Cobra radials on essentially all of my hot rods, all my muscle cars. Most every muscle car we work on or we build, we put Cooper Cobras on it. So there would be a little bit of a coup maybe to put Coopers on this thing. Let me know what you guys think. Would that be kind of sacrilegious or does nobody care? Personally, I think I would like to save $150 on my tires to go with the Coopers versus the BFGs, and they're just as good of a tire. And let's be honest, this thing's going to make like 125 horsepower, so I don't really need that much tire. Okay? Anyway, so that's the outside. We could take a quick little peek on the inside. The seats are obviously not bolted down. They're just chilling in here. Definitely not perfect by any means. The dash is actually in pretty dang good condition as far as the actual dash itself is not in terrible shape. All of the gauges and such are in there. Tiny little steering wheel. Look at that. 3 pedals down there because that's what you need is 3 pedals. 4-speed on the floor, which may become a 5-speed here shortly. Now, there are holes in the floors. The seat mounting locations where they go through the floor are gone. They're rusted through. So, there will be some floor repair that needs to be done in order to put these things in here and for me to not fall out on the road while I'm driving. A little terrifying with that, not overly terrifying. Whether or not we get some floor pans for like a Gremlin and we make them fit, cut what we need to and make them fit, or we just run a flat piece of steel and bolt the seats to them. We'll see what we find. I have not been up underneath this car yet. You guys will be able to see this the very first time I see this. So we'll see what I find underneath it. If it needs floors like front to back, all the way to the back here, we'll see. Floors aren't that big of a deal, but again, we're up against time and money at this point in time. I've only got $800 to get this car running, driving, turning, and stopping, and able to make it 2,500 miles all the way down to the Florida Keys and back. So you got to be kind of picky and choosy on what you fix, what you don't fix, what you can deal with later. Because I'm sure if/when this thing makes it back from this trip, I will definitely do more with it. So I'm going to put the lift arms underneath this thing and get it up in the air, and we're going to get our very first look-see underneath this AMC. Please be okay. Please be okay. Here goes nothing. It didn't fall off the lift yet, so that's a start. Let's see what we got, shall we? All right, front disc brakes are probably hosed. It's been probably 10 plus years since this has gone anywhere. Yeah, so tie rod ends, definitely gonna need tie rod ends. Not overly concerned seeing all kinds of oil drippings and such on this motor because we're going to be pulling this motor out anyway, so not a big deal. One of the cool things with these cars is they came with enormous front sway bars. This is a 1979 car, and this thing doesn't weigh really much of anything over 3,000 pounds, fully loaded with a V8 in it. And this front sway bar is bigger than you would have found in any true muscle car back in the 60s and 70s. So it really gave it some awesome lateral torsional rigidity. Obviously your bushings are completely shot, which is not a huge surprise. Anything rubber probably on this car is basically shot. So that's not a big deal. Get some new sway bar end links, pull the sway bar off, clean it up, paint it, put some new bushings and end links on it, and I think we're going to be all right. Ball joints are probably going to need to be replaced because, yeah. You know, upper control arm ball joint probably going to need to be replaced. We'll see. A lot of cleaning needs to be done here. There's a lot of stuff that's up underneath this car that's not real pretty. Let's see here. Moving back. Again, suspension bushings are pretty huffed. Exhaust, a little crushed. It is a manifold Y-pipe back in a single setup that would exit back on the rear. We'll see how we end up wanting to do this. This Y-pipe actually looks like it's in pretty reasonably decent shape. Now obviously there's a ton of pinches and things that are in here that would cut down airflow. Whether or not we want to address that, we'll see. For this point of it, probably not, but in the very near future, very possibly run a true dual exhaust setup. So as we get under here, where this is, here's your door, so your seats are right here, you start to see where our cancer problem is. This is a hole directly into the floor of the car. Again, here, so yeah, there's definitely some problems here, but this could be a lot worse. It could be a whole lot worse. Passenger side, kind of the same thing. You can see into the cabin there, obviously through the floor. Not exactly the best of situations. Again, another hole through there. Your seat holes there. But as far as the actual rigidity wise goes with the unibody, it's in pretty reasonable shape. We can probably bend and cut some metal to sit in this, cut this floor panel out and put a new panel in there, so that's good. We'll probably do something very similar over here. I haven't honestly looked into floor pans in these cars, whether or not they are easily found and common. If they're, you know, 20 or 30 bucks or 40 bucks, maybe that's the way I'll go. You know, and then just cut out the section that I need and use just that section, weld it in, and leave the floor, which looks like it's in decent shape. You know, where the pedal assembly is, seems like it's in okay shape, so I'll leave that alone and just replace the piece that's under it. We'll see what's available. before we go down that road. Again, obviously, I'm trying to do this on a budget, and I don't want to be spending tons of money. E-brake setup, God only knows whether or not that's going to be functional or not. You know, it did technically stop the car when we moved it off the trailer, so I guess it's something. Something other that's kind of uncommon in cars of this age is it does have a rear sway bar, and it's essentially the same size as you would have had on a front sway bar back in the 60s and 70s for a muscle car. So, you know, front and rear sway bars, pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that. Bushings don't look totally destroyed, but we'll probably get some new bushings for those guys, and that'll be fine. It is a rear leaf spring car, which is the only option back in these days. Not a huge deal. It is a solid rear axle. So no independent rear suspension, no coils back here. So it looks like they're just a generic shock in the rear. No air shocks in the rear, so that's fun. Piece of cake replacing those. Leafs don't seem to be in totally terrible shape. Everything seems to be okay there. There's nothing rusted through. Bushings are pretty well shot, but that's kind of to be expected. Fuel tank is actually pretty solid. Looks like at some point in time somebody's probably put a tank in this thing because it's in pretty solid shape. No leaks out of the rear differential. Now whether or not that means it doesn't leak or means it doesn't have any fluid in it, who knows. It is rear drum, front disc. And these are, I believe, like a 10-inch or 10.8-inch rear drum. It's a pretty heavy-duty drum setup. We will definitely want to touch those once we take this car apart. We'll pull those wheels off, pull those drums off, and see what we've got going on in there. That could be anywhere from no big deal to a total nightmare. We'll see. I honestly don't know whose drums these are. That will take some homework, but I can do that. I'm not afraid of homework. Again, bushings are kind of a little shot. No big deal. Sway bar links will obviously need to be replaced again, or at least the bushings on the links. Pull the sway bars off themselves, recondition those so that they're good shape. Exhaust hangers obviously are shot. Not a big deal. The exhaust itself was rotted off. We actually ripped it off while we were loading it on the trailer. Not a big deal. Don't really care that much. Could be worse. Could be better. There's nothing that's truly terrifying to me from what I'm seeing. It's rough. Yeah, it is. It's a car from the terrible era of American cars that spent a lot of time sitting around, not being driven, not being cared for. You know, it happens. But in the grand scheme of things, this could be a whole lot worse. Yeah, it's got some floor rust. Okay, so what? So put in some new floor pans in it, or put in plates to be able to repair the holes. No big deal. You know, the rear differential's got a little bit of a leak from the front. So replace the rear differential seal. Now, as long as the rear gears are fine, no big deal. Pull the drive shaft out anyway to do the transmission. So we'll replace this. We'll pull off the rear differential cover and we'll see what's going on in there. I have no idea what gears are in this. What's in the differential, I have no clue. I've read all kinds of stuff from this, and I will be honest, I'm learning as I go with this car. There's not a lot of stuff that I've been able to figure out and be able to learn without having the car here, so some of this stuff is going to be learned as we go. The other weird thing here is this is a really rare car. You would not think of an AMC as something like cool and collectible, but they only made 3,800 of these cars, and they only made them in 1979. Now, they did make the AMC Spirit AMX in 1980, but it didn't have the V8 and stick shift option anymore. It was an inline six. And then after that, they started the whole process of going four-wheel drive and then became what everybody knew AMC as in the 80s before they disappeared. So this is actually a pretty rare car. There were probably only maybe 1,000 of them made in 1979. And how many of them are still left? You know, 500 maybe, if that. Now, rare does not mean valuable. Let's be honest with ourselves here. In great shape, this car is probably worth $8,000 to $10,000. It's not an old classic Camaro. It's not an old classic Firebird. It's not an old classic Mustang. It's an AMC. Now, AMC guys, I'm not trying to slight you. Cool car. It's just not valuable. So we do have to balance what makes sense spending-wise for what we do. You don't want to go completely upside down on bringing one of these things back to life. This is definitely going to require some work, but because I have an extra transmission and an extra engine, and a few other things that are up my sleeve, this is possibly not going to end up totally terrible. Now, one other thing I'd like to address that a lot of people think about AMC, and I personally still kind of have that vision of AMC, is that they're parts bin cars. They're not really their own thing. You know, that they bought parts and they just threw all kinds of parts from other people together. Now, while yes, some of that is absolutely true, AMC didn't have the budgets for development that the big three did. And I don't want to give you guys a history lesson here, but the neat part about the fact that they use brakes from these guys and transmissions from those guys and steerings from these guys and electronics and ignition from those guys is the parts are actually pretty available. Brakes for this thing I can get easily. Steering components. There's literally nothing on this car that I've found so far that's just straight up not available, which a lot of low production kind of rarer cars have that problem. Yeah, cool, they're rare. Can you find this? You're gonna spend forever trying to find this. That's a huge pain in the neck. I can order almost every single one of these parts from a local parts store. I'll have it in a couple of days at max if they don't have it on the shelf. That is huge. And the fact that it's cheap, which is even better. So, whether or not it sees another life as a track car after I've done with this 2500 road trip, I don't know. We'll see. I think it's a pretty cool car. It definitely requires a lot of work. It's not perfect. Never will it be perfect. I'm not going to put $15,000 in this car to make it amazing. $10,000 car. That's not going to happen. Now, will I modify that 304 to make it a little bit more healthy with a 5-speed behind it and maybe make it a little low and a little more fun and make it go around corners and yeah, maybe. Do I pull out the 304s and I put a 360 in it and give it a little more oomph? Maybe. All options are on the table. I'm not wedded to anything, to be honest. It's just a cool car that I saw that looked really unique, that really speaks to me as a cool car collecting kind of guy. Something that's odd and unique. I can guarantee you when I get this thing running and driving and I take it to Cars and Coffee, I will be the only AMC AMX Spirit there. Especially one that's got a V8 and a stick shift. America. Oh, and speaking of America, I picked up some engine paint. And the neat thing about AMC is their colors are, of course, red, white, and blue. So, I'm going to paint that 304 red, white, and blue before I stick it in the hole. America. So there you go. There's my pre-purchase, post-purchase inspection. There's a few things that concern me. It's honestly not that bad. Gonna pull the wheels off and see what we got going on inside there with the brakes. To be quite honest with you, I'm probably gonna replace absolutely everything in the braking system. It's a safety thing. The last piece I want to have fail on me is the ability to stop when I'm on a crazy road trip. It's just not smart. So I'm going to probably replace all of the steering, all of the brakes. Suspension, most likely I'll replace the shocks and probably cut the coils in the front because it is coil springs and drop this thing a little bit in the front. Replace all the rubber bushings I can replace and we'll see where we are. Engine wise, I need a clutch and flywheel kit to be able to mate up that Mustang 5-speed onto the back of this AMC 304. That shouldn't be a big deal. That'll cost me a little bit of money up front, but it shouldn't be that big of a deal, and it should be something I can get pretty reasonably easily. I am going to pull the drive shaft out of this thing, and I'm going to pull the rear differential apart in order to see what we got going on back there. Obviously, we want to make sure that that rear end is healthy before we give it any more beans. A lot of the stuff up front is going to get replaced. So, time for me to start ordering parts, at least the first part of parts, and get things moving on this. I'm going to start pulling this car apart, and yeah, then it's time to start really working on this car. So, if you're interested in the AMC AMX and bringing one back to life, this will be the series for you. If you're not interested in this, tough. This is going to be cool, and you should watch it and learn some stuff. Thanks for watching. As always, click on subscribe if you haven't already. Drop us a comment if you're into AMCs, if you're a weirdo person that's into this stuff, or if you're just interested in cool cars and you want to see something new, or do you know more of the history that I don't know that I should know? I'm all ears. I want to learn about this stuff now that I'm an AMC owner. As always, we appreciate you watching. We hope you come back for the next one. I'm going to get tearing into this car, and we'll go from there. I'll see you in the next episode. Time to take this car apart.